Once again, guys, we just want to welcome you to episode number 3 of our Fireside chat. We had an opportunity to come down here to Bellarmine University to work out with the wrestling team. And today we really want to talk to Gavin and talk about his story and really share that with you. And so we're excited for you guys to join us. So Gavin, please tell people who you are.
All right, guys. So my name is Gavin Berkley. I handle, as far as the company, I handle a lot of the media that goes along with that. These guys automatically put it on me because of being the youngest. They think that I know a little bit more about it, but no, we've kind of all taken a collective at it, and definitely a learning process. But originally from Western Pennsylvania. I grew up in a really small town. I graduated with 78 students. I could probably name them all if you put them all in front of me. And just is a great place to grow up, I'd say. Probably not a great place to be. There's just not a lot there, but definitely learned a lot of great values about family and friendship, and just some awesome relationships that I still have to this day that I continue to build upon when I go back home. Big part of my life was sports growing up. Pretty much my entire childhood growing up, it was football, baseball, wrestling. Probably my least favorite at the time was wrestling. Everything about it, from the cutting weight, going to tournaments all day, just couldn't stand it. But I'd been doing it since I was 5 years old. And then as I got older, probably around middle school time frame, I really started taking a liking to it because I started seeing, hey, this is one where you don't really, it's a team sport, but it's very much dependent on the work that you put into it. So you're the only guy out there, and you got to work harder than the other guy to have the desired end result. With that being said, I still loved playing baseball all throughout the summer with my friends, and then playing football as well going into high school. But I really started to focus on wrestling, and I would say I was probably, in my opinion, I was okay for where I was at. It was a lot of perspective for sure as I continued to go up in levels, and that's going to be a theme with a lot of what I talk about is kind of perspective along the way. But that's just a little piece, kind of my background growing up in a small town. A big part of my life was just that was sports, and it's all year round for me. So
tell us a little bit about your journey into where you are right now, because you talked about your childhood. What got you to this point?
So I would say, so where I'm at right now, I didn't really think too much about the military, honestly, growing up. I knew about it. My dad was in the Navy for 6 years. I'd always known that. We had gone down to the beach, to Virginia Beach, was a place we always went on family vacation every year. We go, seeing the jets fly over, going to Norfolk, seeing the aircraft carriers, because that's what my dad served on. So that was kind of like my introduction to it. But going through, I wanted to to be a Division I athlete. That was a strong, a desire that I had. Originally, I thought I really wanted to be, Division I. I wanted to play football somewhere. I would probably say that was probably what I was best at, in my opinion. But just very, very small school, and you see kind of a bigger fish in a small pond. But definitely, I had to put myself out there with that being from a small town. So I'm like, if I'm going to play at the next level, I gotta get my name out there. So I ended up, starting off my career in wrestling. It was very, I think my first year, my freshman year, I wrestled at 140 pounds, and I was 15 and 16 as a freshman. and I was bumping around. My high school coach always loves to tell that story about, I had to, having to bump up sometimes 1 or 2 weight classes, depending on the match, what was better for the team. And then, my sophomore year went up. I was a 160 pounder, I believe. Got a little bit better. I had a winning record, but I still didn't advance to even our regional tournament. I take a lot of pride in being from Pennsylvania. It's a very, it's known for its wrestling, and just great competition in general. And then going into my junior year, that was when I finally broke through. I ended up winning a district title, making to regionals, and then qualifying for the state tournament. I got 5th at the region, and they took the top 5. So kind of got that first feel, and then going into my senior year, that was I had my sights set on a state title, and I knew like this is probably going to be my avenue to go into to get into the next level, to go to school. I was a pretty good student, but again, relatively speaking, I did okay in school, but then, when I had to take my standardized tests, I think I took the SAT about 5 times. At least I took the SAT, or I took the ACT, I think, another 3 times. But one of my really close mentors, he's my dad's wrestling coach, and then, he was always in the room with us. Both of his sons went to West Point, and I didn't know too much about it, honestly. I'd gone through to some little local events they have for the service academies, and I was like, okay, like you need a congressional nomination. I was like, I gotta find out about that. You have to have, usually your SAT scores need to be here, and that was extremely intimidating because I'm like, okay, I have a lot of work to do there. My GPA was fine, but I mean, pretty much you show up to class and and do your homework. You can have a good GPA essentially. But definitely I knew that having from what I heard, like both of his sons were wrestlers, and he's like, hey, we'll try and get you recruited athletes have a way better shot of getting in. So going into my senior year, I had a few schools interested. I'd taken visits, a few for football and a few for wrestling. I was very interested in going to the University of Maryland. At first, I pretty much all but committed, and then I really wanted to go to the Naval Academy. That was my thing, but they didn't have any interest. I was like, I want to be a Navy SEAL too. Like that's what I want to do. You see all the movies and everything in the books about them. So I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do. I'd like to do that. And, but I still tried. Once they kind of showed, hey, thanks but no thanks. Went to their little summer seminar thing they had. I think it was like I was just about ready to fully commit to Maryland, and then Coach Young, Coach Paul Young, who is a guy actually that I got to see him about 2 weeks ago at a wedding. The first time I'd seen him, since he was a coach, he reached out to me and said, hey, like you got accepted at the prep school. So I was like, okay, well, I guess that's good. He's like, you go there for a year, and pretty much if you don't get in trouble and like you don't completely fail out the classes, like you'll get your appointment to the academy. And luckily, like my mentor, his son had done that as well, and spoke very highly of it. And I was like, all right, sign me up. I think I went as soon as I heard that same day. I went on like the portal and I signed up. And then I was like that summer I was heading out there to their version of basic training, and ended up meeting some of the my best friends that I could ever imagine having. That was probably one of the most fun years we had. Just kind of first time really being away from home. It was also one of the best years being there because we could have a car, whereas when you're actually there, you can't have a car till your junior year. You got paid as a PB2. So after not having to pay for school and then having that, you're considered a PB2 when you're there. So that was pretty cool. So we traveled all around, and then also I got to go wrestle with the team. They called it Down the Hill. So got to get my butt kicked a little bit down there and get a taste of Division I wrestling. And then, that next year, graduated prep school, got down and then went down the hill and, started my plebe year the next year. Luckily, it was with that group of guys that started, that were there with me at prep school, so it made it kind of a little bit easier, gnash my teeth through that kind of, going through that, because I was definitely not the best student by any means, but it's made a lot of good relationships. I had some great professors, and they're very much about helping you down there. Kind of, if you put the effort in, they're not gonna let you fail really. So it wasn't easy. Adding wrestling on top of that was, it was difficult, and something that we talked to the guys today a little bit at Bellarmine University. It was great getting to talk to the athletes there. I think it kind of, there were times you have regrets a lot. A close friend of mine said, he talked about the definition of resilience, and it's like, and he described it as, you have regrets about the things you didn't do, but then it's also the things that you did well too. You did this well, but it could have been done better. What if it had happened a different way? And it's something that kind of it's just something that's in your head that sticks with you. Especially competing on a stage like that. It was definitely a new perspective for me. I was like, okay, I was kind of a bigger fish in a small pond, and then I'm in the room getting my butt kicked, and I'm like, this is the real deal. This is the show, and ended up being a 4-year backup, I kind of fell out of love for the sport at times. When you're trying to balance everything, you're balancing school, you're balancing wrestling at the same time. There were some, other things going on, militarily. I was, in my junior or my sophomore year, I tried out for the combat diver qualification course. So I was in there doing all that while wrestling in school. I learned so much from that year. Probably, I was in great shape, but I remember getting sick a lot, and missing class quite a bit because I was my body just couldn't keep up with it. But I learned a lot about myself from that experience and getting the opportunity to go to that school that summer. It ended up not working out for me. I was a safety violation, and I was very crushed after that. And it took me a long time to get over it, but ended up finishing it out. Something that was, and I told the guys about it today, was every year before the Navy match, we had a letter that we'd read that Tommy Hendricks, he was a former Green Beret, and I think he was an 05 grad. He wrote this letter about, he was a 4-year backup like me, and he said, what wrestling taught me was how to suffer, and it set me up for anything I could do. Anything else I was going to do in my life, in my military career, I had an advantage. I felt that I had an advantage because I knew how to suffer where other people didn't. He was comfortable in the suffering. He thrived in that. And I think that's just that ode is something that every wrestler can kind of relate to, and that's something that I tried to relate to those guys. But fast forward, I ended up making it through. I branched infantry. I was, pretty low in the class. I think I was 918 of 1,080 cadets, but nonetheless got to walk across the stage. And then the next thing up was, going down to Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, for basic officer course, Ranger School, and Airborne School, and then where I initially got introduced to Chad down there. We had a good crew of guys. We were very close knit. It was at much simpler times where there weren't a lot going on. It was weekend warriors. Living for the weekend. You're out in the field, and then you just go out and have fun on the weekends, and it wasn't too stressful. After that, ended up going to, once Bullock was over, went to Airborne School, finished, and then went to Ranger School. Ended up failing my first time going, and then getting an opportunity to come back, that's when COVID hit too. So we were kind of in a lockdown, and so I'm like, they say like there's never a good time to go. I was like, no, I think that's the exception. It was a good time to go because literally nothing's going on in the world, and you were just there, like essentially in a quarantine already. And yeah, so I went there in April of 2020 and ended up doing a little extra time there after recycling Darby phase, which is I needed it for sure. And then ended up in July, graduating then and coming back. I think I probably lost around 20 to 30 pounds total.
You gained it back. That's good.
Definitely gained it back for sure, very quite easily. And then it was off to Fort Stewart after that, Fort Stewart, Georgia. But yeah, I was very fortunate when I got down to Fort Stewart. I ended up kind of taking a platoon right away. I moved in initially. My girlfriend at the time had moved down and was already had a teaching job set up, and had found like a beautiful home down in Puller, about 45 minutes away. And so I was looking forward to getting down there, and then went down there. And pretty much as soon as I got there, we ended up going to Korea for 9 months, which you think I would have done a little bit of research into that, like, hey, where's the unit going? I didn't know. I was like, I didn't realize they were going to. I was like, oh, maybe I won't go because I got here late. And as you guys all know, that's not how it works, really. They're going to get their people over there. So yeah, but fortunately, I had an amazing team, amazing platoon that I got to lead with some guys that I still talk to today, and that are out doing great things, whether they're still in or out now. And then came back from that 9 months, was home for about 5 or 6, ended up going out, moving, buying a house, a brand new house, and then I transitioned from my platoon leader position to XO, and then Russia, Ukraine happened about 4 or 5 months after that, and they decided that we were, the most ready show of force to go over there, and so we were going to Germany for what was supposed to be 3 months, and so that was quite an experience going over there, a lot of uncertainties and unknowns, and it ended up being 6 months total. So definitely a lot of adversity. I saw a lot of people, go through some things over there while we were there. I saw people kind of struggling, and with their family struggling, with dealing with all the uncertainties, and people that I was working with every day, and then ended up coming back. Ended up coming back in, I want to say it was August. Then August of 22 is when we ended up getting back finally, and then got back. So some things had kind of been up. When I go into kind of my story, there's things that I explain. I like to make it clear that it's one of accountability, but I feel like to properly tell my story, I have to kind of tell you to get into the headspace that I was in, and just kind of how I got to the position that I was in. I noticed some things before I came home. Moving out of Fort Stewart, ended up before I went to Korea, got engaged, got married right before going to Korea, and then. A few reasons for that. Obviously, you making sure your spouse is taken care of. We kind of talked about it. We're both like, okay, this is probably a good idea. Just in case, especially if you want to move jobs or something like that. So we ended up doing that, and then obviously a lot of uncertainties with being gone. Not a lot of guys were gone for 15 months. After going to their first duty station. It's like especially guys that were in my year group. But I noticed the closer I got back, I kind of had less and less communication. It was harder and harder to communicate with my spouse. and just I didn't know what was up. And obviously, communication is a two-way game, so it's not like I'm obviously at some blame for that, but I felt like, okay, this is very weird. And then received some messages that I was like, okay, this sounds rough. So it's not something to talk about over text. I was like, I've had a pretty sinking feeling. And I was like, all right, well, maybe if we see each other, it'll get better. And I got home, I got to meet up with our pup. We had, my pup was, my best friend, like I explained. He's super happy to see me. It was like even being gone that long, it was like he still remembered me. And things were pretty normal for a week. And then it was, a week after that, my spouse sat me down. It was kind of like, I've done a lot of thinking, and I think that I'm not sure about being married. And I know in the military you got to move and stuff. I'm just saying like how she's very comfortable where she's at and career oriented, and I didn't take it well. I did not take it well, and I felt like it was a state of disbelief. Like I did not feel like I felt like I was living in some sort of dream, just waiting for somebody to smack me and wake me up and be out of it. But it wasn't a dream. And the next few weeks and months go by. I reached out to somebody that I was with. A lot of that was Nick, our other teammate. And we were trying to really be there for one another and sharpen each other, and be like, hey man, I think you got to look at some things. You got to look at is like, look at your ego. Like, your ego might be getting in the way. And like I talked to these guys earlier today about it, like, yeah, there were some things with me. I think one of the reasons I was in disbelief, I was like, man, I'm this, I'm a West Point grad. I was a Division I athlete, Army wrestler. Like, I'm not going to get divorced. Like, I don't do that. Like, that's not going to be me. I throughout my childhood, and I don't think they mind me saying it. Because I'd say it in front of them too. It's like I felt like I saw my parents fight a lot, and it was something that it did mess with me. I love them both very much, and I know that they would do anything for me. But when you see that, it is tough. And I always thought like, oh, man, if they didn't get divorced, like I don't fight like that. Like I'm gonna be fine. And so I'm like, well, maybe I gotta figure out some stuff about myself. Maybe there's something getting in the way. And I did try to take a step back, and I let some time go by. And one thing that was said is like, I need time. And then I said, I respect that you need time, but one thing I can't promise you is that I'm not going to start to go. I'm not going to grow resentful after a while because I'm human. And time continued to go, and it got to a point, I was living in a roommate type state in my home. And I had a lot of really great friends, and I consider myself extremely blessed with the brothers and friends I have in my life, and people being like, man, like that's not healthy, like how you're living like that, living in a state like that. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I was like kind of shrugged it off, and I turned to other things. I had this void in my life, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna drink. And it's the funny thing about drinking is it will take your mind off of it for a little bit, and then it's like it's on steroids. It'll amplify it, and by the slightest thing, the slightest reminder of something, and then it's like you're in some sort of state, emotional state, where you're crying, you're angry, whatever, and it just amplifies all that. And I turned to that, and I got to a point where I was like, if we're unable to reconcile this, like I'm gonna go try to fill that void elsewhere. And I spent my weekends, going downtown, trying to talk to girls, whatever. I didn't know how really, because I was like, I've been in this relationship, for 12 years, between dating and being engaged and married, and and it's like, and I'm still married technically, but I'm still going downtown and acting like I'm completely single because that's how I choose to fill this void in my life. And I'm using alcohol as a tool to do that. I'm going hanging out with my friends, and then after the weekend's over, I come back to living in that house, in that space, cross the threshold into that, and it's just like an altered state of reality, and obviously unsustainable. And one of the things I always thought is like, especially being a man of faith, I had this void in my life, and I'm going to these other things. I'm trying to do the right thing. I was trying to, I consider, I'm a Christian. I consider myself a man of God, and I'm trying. I'm not practicing what I'm preaching though. I'm going out and doing these things, and again, like I said, keep saying is I was filling this void in the wrong places. Meanwhile, I'm trying to accomplish my dream at the time, which I talked about wanting to be a Navy SEAL. One of the things, that obviously didn't happen, but I wanted to. It was like the next best thing. I want to be a Green Beret. I tried out to. I had interviewed for Ranger Regiment when I was lieutenant. I was in Korea, and I interviewed for it, and it went really well. And I was looking for it. I was like, and even talking to my battalion commander at the time, he was like, "Man, I think it looks good." He had reached out. The XO of the first bat had reached out to him and was like, "Hey, he interviewed really well. It's hard to assess, junior officers. Like, what would you say?" And he was like, "You need to hire him for sure. He's great." So I usually never got too excited about that stuff because I knew like how things can, it doesn't always plan out that way. And it ended up, about 6 weeks later, sorry, we encourage you to reach out elsewhere. But I was like, hey, it's kind of all eggs in that basket because, it's local and everything that if not, I'm going to have to, move back up to Benning or go to the West Coast. And so, that didn't work. I was like, I want to be a Green Beret. Like, that's what I'm meant to do. Army wrestlers do that. My teammates, they are the tip of the spear guys. They're SEALs, they're Rangers, they're Green Berets, and, that's like, felt like that's what I'm supposed to do. That's my purpose. So I was very ready for that. I had been training since I was in Germany. I put just an immense amount of time into that. And then, so I'm still dealing with all these other things. But then I go in October. I'm very, very well prepared, I feel. And then, get to land nav, and I get too close to a road at night, and then still ended up finishing it. And then when they have that formation, after it's over, you hear your roster number called, and you just, that sinking feeling in your stomach. It was very similar to the feeling I got, like talking about, those text messages before I came back from Germany. And I was just devastated. You spend your time in the tent city then, and you're just kind of basking in your sorrow with the other guys there. And I came back, and I remember getting some phone calls from some really close friends, and just like brought me to tears. My one buddy, my buddy Andrew I remember him calling me and being like, I told him what happened, and he's like, "Dude, you're the toughest dude I know." And I burst into tears. Mm-hmm. I was like, man, it's tough. I was like, but I'm gonna press on. I placed a lot of my identity in that. Mm-hmm. And then I got back, and then kind of went back in that same thing. I was back into the reality, but fortunately, in January came around, and I was like, I got a call back, and I didn't know who it was from. I saw that it was from Knox, and I was like, okay. And I took it, and it was the future readiness officer for SF, and he was saying like, hey, we saw that you came in the October class, and I know that things didn't go well, but I'm reading good things about you. We have you on a list here, some guys that we think if you came back that you'd have success. So like, when could you come back? And I was like, I almost dropped me to my knees. I was like, because I remember calling Chad about it right after the time, and he could hear it in my voice. That's something to me. Like, man, I hear it in your voice how excited you are. I was like, yeah, I just got eye surgery. I need to wait a few more months until like I don't need to, until I'm kind of clear. He's like, all right, we'll set you up for April. So I was very excited. I jumped right back into training, and he was getting after it, twice as hard. But something felt a little off about it. I was like, I still feel like I was almost using that like that as an escape from my situation.
Okay.
And it's like I'm just using this as kind of like, hey, I'm forgetting about my situation at home, and then this like search for wanting to be loved. Like the only time I really felt wanted to be loved was I went through the door and my dog was there to see me and excited and jumped up on me and gave me a hug. But yeah, it kind of all came to fruition. Only weeks before going to selection, I went down to Savannah with my friends for a weekend, and Sunday rolled around, and they had all kind of gone their separate ways, and I was like, the last thing I want to do is go back home. So I decided to go down to the beach, and I was like, I'm gonna go to this one spot that's open late. I'm going to continue this party and continue this escape from reality. Was there for, I don't know how, I was with complete strangers that I didn't even know. I was like, what am I doing here with these people? I don't even know. Like, I'm just, trying to fit in. And then the next moment that I remember after that was waking up to a blinding light being pushed on a bed in a hospital, people in masks and like opening up to, it wasn't, you hear the stories about people opening up and seeing heaven, being exposed to a glimpse of heaven, and it was very bright, but it was definitely not heaven. It was sheer terror. That's how I would describe it. It is complete unknown I didn't know where I was, how I got there. I have blood all over me, and my clothes were ripped up, and I just I'm strapped to this bed. But I had left there at the time and drove over an hour back, and was on I-95 in the opposite lane of oncoming traffic. Ended up hitting a van, a 12-passenger van, and then right after that hitting a tractor trailer head on. I was, from going back and reading the police report, I was unresponsive at the scene, and it was hours later that I even was conscious and remember anything. In that I had harmed other people, and I didn't find out till later from my father, who came down to visit me, that he's like, do you remember anybody being with you? And I was like, I know Bo was with me, my dog. And he's like, yeah, he was with you. And I could tell, I knew it right away that it had happened. And it's hard to even, I just remember my breath going away, just hyperventilating, and I don't think I cried at the moment. I didn't think I had anything in me to cry. But at that time, I just remember it, and especially that night when when my dad had to go back to his hotel, just thinking crying out to God, you took the thing that showed me love, the only thing that I looked forward to coming home to. My dream is now shattered. I hurt other people, and my career's over. I know that. And why didn't you kill me? Why am I you making me suffer through this, sitting on here? I don't know if I'm going to be able to walk again. I don't know if I'm able to run again. I had a rod through my knee, and I didn't know at the time my hip was completely shattered, and I was supposed to get reconstructive hip surgery in a few days, and I just couldn't move, just strapped to this bed. But in the days following, just surrounded by so much love, the people coming to see me, and I think about one of the things we talk about here on our team is who are the 5 people in your corner? Who are the people in your corner? We try to do things alone, and it's who are those people you can depend on? And it's just some of my old teammates, some of my best friends in the world coming there, them and their spouses, and coming there and holding my hand. When I wouldn't have blamed them if they didn't. I didn't deserve that. But I was like, I must have shown them, this form of love that they were able to reciprocate that to me. And then Chad walked through the door, which was, I was talking to guys, like he actually drove down from around here. He was in Kentucky at the time, and ended up driving the 8 hours down to spend a few hours with me, and seeing the state that I was in. And then, I was there for a little over a week, and then, had to, get surgery, go through, CT scans and everything. Ended up getting out, and then had some really good friends at the time that I was with that took me in, and I went and immediately lived with them. The days that followed were, some of the very, very darkest of my life. All the uncertainties, and we talk about suicide is very prevalent in today's world, and I was a person that I would have judged people for that. Back then I was like, it's just some people were just weak people. I was like, that's not me though. I'm a pretty resilient guy. Like, wrestled my whole life. I'm this Army officer, I'm this infantry guy, ranger. Like that's not me. And it's like the places your brain can take you to when you're alone. It's a feeling of complete hopelessness. And I know other people on our team have struggled with this, and that's the scary thing, is getting to a place where you're like, I'd be better off, and I'd be better off not being around anymore, and convincing yourself that everybody else that would also be better off without you here, which is the furthest thing from the truth. We all have people that depend on us, but some time had gone by, and there's another thing too. Talking to my dad there, and my dad and I love my dad, and him and I we've had a lot of fights throughout the years. There's definitely a lot of things. He's a very stubborn guy. I don't think he'll mind me saying that. I think he knows he's a guy that it's hard to earn his trust. If you have him as a friend, you have him as a friend for life, but he's hard to get along with at times. But he said something to me that really, I knew he loved me, but it really proved that he loved me. He told me, if you would have, he said, going back to talk about, taking your life. He's like, if you would have taken somebody else's life in that, he's like, I would have killed you in that hospital. He said, I would have found a way to, while you're sleeping or something. But how do I explain that sounding like that's a place of love? Because he knew what I would do had that been the case. If I would have been able to live with taking somebody else's life, and I would have, as a man of faith, it's like, you don't take your own life. Your life is a gift. It's a gift from God. And
It may not have sounded at the time like it was something but in his mind at the time, he was thinking of that in a merciful way, because he knew you would have done it yourself.
Absolutely, and that's why I explained this. That was one of the greatest showings of love, for him to say that, for him to love me to the point where he's like, I love you so much that, I couldn't picture you taking your own life, so I would have taken, I would have taken the consequence for that. It's very tough to explain, but I think it's something important to explain, because I think, it goes into that. But, I think it was a few months had gone by, maybe 2 to 3 months, and Chad had called me. He's always keeping in contact. You guys know how he keeps in contact.
At 5 o'clock every morning.
Yeah. So he had called me. I knew he'd always kind of talked about the idea of what is now Beyond the Trek. And he talked about really wanting to start it up, something to make a difference, and something that is able to give back and teach people how to be better for those who depend on them. Because there's you see so many examples of people they got too much going on in life. They have a higher standard for others than they have for themselves, and so they're like, it's like they don't lead themselves first. And And I'm like, the only thing I could think of, I was like, that sounds great, brother, but why are you talking to me about it? Like,
You know what's funny is all of you had the same reaction. You're like, that's cool, dude. Why are you calling me?
what do you want?
Because I called you, that's why.
What do you want from me?
You're the only number I had in my phone. No.
Yeah, I was like,
I
he's just
actually
trying to
don't
make
have
me
any
feel
other
better.
numbers.
I was like, he must just be trying to make me feel better or something, but I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a sign. You know, I'd identified so much of my identity was like, you know, I'm supposed to go do this thing. I'm supposed to go this is God's plan for me. I'm supposed to go be a Green Beret. I was given this second opportunity because of that, and then, you know, your whole world gets halted. You know, boom, I'm divorced now. I don't really have a home. I'm not gonna have a job in the near future, and he's asking me to be a part of this team. Like, you know, I'm in the eyes of the world, I'm a criminal in the eyes of the world. Like, you know, that's that my identity, what I thought I once was, all of that had changed. And that's where my mind took me. I was convinced of that, you know, this is who I am now. Like, this is who I am. I don't think that's who I am. I know that that's not, you know, the true person. But like, on the eyes of the world, seeing me on paper, seeing me in the news, you know, that's who I am. You know, after a while, I, you know, finally went back to work, you know, on crutches. That was a very difficult experience, going in there with the looks that you get from people. And I will say, you know, I was received well. You know, and again, nobody had to do that, but I was, you know, that was a humbling experience to like see, like, hey, you know, we're not going to look at you. And the thing is, I heard things from people that, you know, I was close to, and about hearsay, people talking about, you know, stuff behind your back, and it's like, all right, that's yeah, it definitely hurt me, but it's like, I get why they said that. I mean, until you know somebody's story and you've walked a mile in your boots, it honestly, what that did for me is like, that's good to know, because I was that person at some point. I used to be that person. It's like, oh, that idiot. Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. Like, are you, yeah, like, and then now I'm in that seat, and I'm like, okay, I have an opportunity to display forgiveness and maturity, or I can keep living in this and do nothing about it. You know, our name in general, we had some guys asking today, Beyond the Track, why is it Beyond the Track? And you know, I love what Chad says about that. It's like, you know, you're not the sum of your past mistakes or your successes. It's whatever happens in your life, be it good or bad. It's like, what you do beyond that is what defines you, and what people are going to remember you by. Your family. There are people that depend on you. Whether you're a boss, whether you're a coach, whether you're a husband, a father. There's people that directly depend on you. You know, and so it's not just about you when it goes in that. It's like, what can you take to ensure that, you know, this is not your story. And so I was like, I can live in this, or I can choose to use what I've learned, because the crazy thing is that there's people out there living your story. This is something that I've heard Chad talk about, I've heard all you guys talk about. It's like, there's somebody out there living my story. Or they're in a place where they could live my story, because they're going through the things that I went through and on the path of destruction that I was on. And, you know, if I can stop one person from doing that by being vulnerable and explaining, like, hey, you know, this is where I was in life, and accepting that accountability. But, you know, I'm not defined by this. And, you know, and I know, you know, in my faith, I'm not defined. That's not who God knows me as. That's, you know, as my own flesh, how I try to, you know, I get down on myself, and I have my days. Still have my days. I was just talking to Chad about, you know, in the hotel the other night. I was like, yeah, you know, a little bit rougher night for me for some reason. You know, I think we're just thinking about everything. You know, having to talk about, knowing that I was going to talk about stuff, but, you know, I talked a lot there. So,
I mean, the reason I ask is, what happens is, you see interviews and people like cut through, and I just wrote, you know, there's some other questions I have. But before we get into those questions, we want to really take a break and give a word from our sponsors.
Smith. I'm announcing right now, Downrange Supplements is in your local commissary. If you're anywhere near a base and you have base access, get to the commissary and check out our pre-workout, our rehydration BCA formula, and our protein. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. It is the best in the market. And Listed 9 Fight Company, my brand, is partnered with Downrange Supplements for a reason. And I tell you, their products work. And also, don't forget, we kill suckers.
Guys, welcome back. As we continue, I know Gavin went in extreme detail, which is really great on your story, but there's some things that I wanted to go back to that I think really identify some of that resiliency that you were able to build. And you had talked about when you were at West Point, combat diver training taught you a lot about yourself. What is it that it taught you? What did you learn about yourself that you didn't know from the mat, that you learned from combat diver, that you actually apply it today?
Oh man, I mean, it taught me a lot, and it was another one of those things that, like, it was a failure, but I was very much caught up in that badge, like, the bubble, oh, that looks cool, I want that, I see the guys with that, that's what I want. But the whole thing about it was like, and like we talk more coaching people, like, it's not the end result, it's not the wins and losses, like, it is the journey that got you there. That journey is what the benefit that I got from that was. It was funny because, like, every Thursday night we do stress inoculation night, and I had never passed out before in anything, and that was a pretty new experience for me. Being underwater and then waking up on the pool deck with, somebody put an oxygen tube on me, but I think the other guys loved it because they got a break after it happened, so they were depending on me to do that. People were depending, everybody's depending on me. So I kind of after the first few times, I knew, like, hey, it's Thursday night, it's going to be a rough night. But you know what? It was literally that, you push yourself to a point on the wrestling mat when you get extremely tired. There's no other sport that puts you through that level of fatigue. But doing something to the point where, okay, you're literally till you pass out. If you don't get pulled out, then you drown. But we had, nobody was going to let that happen. It kind of showed me my limitation. Like, you are capable of so much more from a physical standpoint, for sure, than you can imagine. And then it just as at the same time I'm balancing college wrestling, I'm balancing school, which school was hard enough for me. As a organizational psychologist, I'm pretty sure they made that major up for me, practically, organizational psychology and leadership, leadership major at West Point. My friends will watch this and they'll laugh because they always joke with me about it. But that's what I needed to graduate. I needed something. Numbers was not my thing. I needed help with all that stuff. But I was able to get through all of it while doing that. And I had some amazing mentors. Some of the guys on the team at the time were guys that were cadre for it, that had already done it, and just like seeing how they carried themselves, like the humility they have, and like all those guys now are they're out team leaders somewhere. And just people that are still just very close brothers to me. It taught me a lot about myself, about my physical limitations, and just about a lot of the stuff you did in there was team based stuff, like a brick push with a buddy where you have to have somebody's on that brick the entire time, and you're pushing it 50 meters. Like you're down, you're down there holding it. If you're up on the surface taking a bunch of air, like your buddy's down there suffering. And just like I talked about wrestling, really teaching you how to suffer. It was just just an addition of additional suffering. It's like, how can you get a PhD in suffering? Like, wrestling Division I at West Point while doing combat dive training, while trying to, drag your knuckles through, your school coursework. That can get you pretty close to a doctorate in suffering, I think, for sure. And, who knows if I don't have those experiences, in my future, how I'm able to respond to things.
When we talk about the feeling, right? There's one thing we talk about these kids is like winning or losing doesn't matter, but the feeling you get from it, the high you get from winning because you put in the hard work, or the guilt and just everything that comes with losing, you remember that.
Yeah.
You remember that, and that's what propels you forward. I mean, to your point, like doing all those hard things, you can always look back on those and you're like, well, whatever I'm about to do right now is not going to be bad as Thursday night. You know what I mean?
It's not gonna be a new thing. Whatever I'm gonna do right now will not be bad as Thursday night.
Yeah.
Stress this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can resonate with that, like combat diver, because I went to preschool, but that was the only school that I failed. It's like where I passed it, but I didn't pass to the point where like, hey, we're gonna send you out of combat diver school. Of course not. Keep us. So, but I understand that. You talked about the regret that you experienced doing success. What was that regret? Because you said it was success and you were successful, but you could have done it better. What was the regret really about?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I'm a big visualizer. I'm always looking at things, from different perspectives, and I think like I have a vision of something in my head how it's supposed to go. I could have been very, very happy, with, oh man, I got a chance to wrestle at the Division I level. Like, what percentage of Americans, get to do that? I got to, I placed in the state of Pennsylvania, and I was as the first medal in 25 years. But it was just the feeling I had after. I was like, oh, man, like I could. What if I win this match and I'm in the finals, or I'd have been a champion. You think about the what could have been. It could have been their successes, but then also, like what could it have been? What a little switch here. The Titanic turns a degree or two and it misses the iceberg. So it's a tough question to answer, but I think because it's like it's still a success, but you have this vision, and if it doesn't live up to your vision of what it is, it's like, that can cause some regret.
That's good. So, I mean, this is, I guess, a little deeper question to ask you. You spoke about your high school sweetheart that you married, you were with her for some time, and you said there were some things that were going on, and you talked about text messages when you're in Germany. Do you mind sharing, like, what were the nature of those text messages that made you feel like, hey, some things are off here?
Yeah, so like I said, it was not a lot of communication, and when I say all this, I don't have any animosity towards her.
Okay.
I want her to be happy, and I wrote her a very long letter. That was, Nick actually. He advised me. He's like, I think you should do this. And I think he may have done the same to his wife, and so I did that, and I poured my heart into that, and I ended it with, if you said you don't want a family, but if someday you change your mind and you do want that, it's not with me, I'll be happy for you. It's very tough to write that on paper. It's like, man, do I really mean that? But she just said some things. She's like, it was something along the lines like, having a lot on her mind, this not really being something she wanted to talk about over text. And then, it was something about, I didn't know when the right time was, because she was saying it as like worried about me going over, I don't want to drop these feelings I have on you before you're going over to a very unknown situation where you're in a position of leadership. You're company XO of an infantry company, and my response, I was like, that would have been the best time to tell me. If we would have went to war, I wouldn't have cared about coming back. Which obviously is not the right answer. It's an extremely immature way to look at it. But afterwards, that's kind of how I responded when I got back. I was like, oh, you should have told me then, because I wouldn't have cared about coming back at all. It would have given me a reckless abandon, which I think everybody would agree that's a pretty terrible leadership quality to have when you have other people's lives in charge of you, not caring what happens to you. Yeah, for sure. But it gave me a sinking feeling because it didn't really give me an answer. I responded with, do you want to be married to me anymore? And just very vague, this isn't a conversation that, I want to have. So it's like, I'm automatically going to assume the worst. I'm going to be like, okay, well, you pretty much told me what I needed to hear here. And, that's kind of what the 2 days before I came back, I just, I could probably talk to some of the guys that were with me at the time. I was very closed off from everybody. Just that state of disbelief, but there was still a little bit of hope, but just a state of disbelief, like this isn't real, this isn't happening to me, and which a large part of that is ego, being arrogant, like, oh, this could never happen to me, because, obviously, for her to feel that way, it's very, in me, I want to believe, like, no, it's all her, but, to have those sort of feelings, it had to be something that the way that I was a husband, that wasn't right. So it's something I always tell people, and I guess creating and moving on from the questions. I talk about being just as thankful for those valley experiences as you are for the mountaintops, and especially from a Christian standpoint, where we're called to consider it pure joy when we face trials and tribulations of all kinds. That's very hard to get across to somebody. That doesn't make any sense. Like to humans, it is very hard to make sense, I feel like. But I wasn't perfect, and I know now what a husband is supposed to be. I've seen bad examples of it, not just from me, but from other people, and and I've seen really great examples. I've seen amazing examples of people that I try to emulate, which like members of our team. I want to try to emulate that and be a sponge and take that in. So I'm now very blessed, to have an amazing woman, my fiance Lindsay, coming into my life. I always say that. I say she saved me. That's how I always explain it. She saved my life. She reached out to me when I was in the hospital bed. I mean, we weren't dating or anything at the time. Like I wasn't even, I didn't get my divorce papers until getting out of the hospital. But she sent me some scripture and she's like, hey, I'm praying for you. Like you're gonna get through this. I can't, I don't know verbatim what it is. I know I have it on my phone somewhere. But I was like, man, for this girl to say that, and then, a few weeks later, she's like, hey, once you're out of this, I want to come see you and spend time with you. And it's her explaining this is pretty funny with her seeing her experience from it. Because at the time I thought, there might be something wrong with this girl. Like, there might be something wrong because I would not want to be given, if I was her, I wouldn't want to be in a 10-mile radius of me. Yes. What do I bring to the table? I'm a divorced man. I have felony charges against me. I have a job that I will eventually not have. And everybody knows, I have this black mark on me now that I'm, who knows what my future holds. But she kept coming to see me. And I was like, I could not, I was like, is this, this girl's like, maybe she's out of pity, like she's trying, because I was very, I was still doing it. Yeah, exactly. I always knew of her. Her brother was one of my college teammates and one of my closest friends to this day. He had made a joke. We were at, I went up to visit him and some other buddies up in Columbus, Georgia at the time, and he was like, once everything's done for you in Savannah, like you should ask my sister out or something. And I'm like, I know that you are, you're not sober right now because you would never say that to me sober. It's like, no, I'm serious. I'm like, all right. I mean, maybe we'll see. So I had messaged her a few times on Instagram and, just like like just dumb stuff. And, you know, she then, you know, the next time I really heard from her, because I went down to a concert with a good buddy in like February before everything happened, and I was like, hey, I'm in, you know, your neck of the woods. And she was with some friends or something, and I was like, thank God she didn't meet up with me, because my intentions were nowhere near. Like I was nowhere near I needed to be, and that could have absolutely ruined that for me. And one of my buddies that I was with said that. He's like, man, that's a blessing that she ended up not being there and didn't see you. And I was like, absolutely. Absolutely, because I was still dealing with that trauma and that pain, and just trying to, you know, that outlet, you know, just how do I fill this void in my life? You know, that quick, easy button, the pill that, you know, just take the pill to make everything better, give me the answers to everything. Like, that's what I was in search of. But, you know, after a while, it's funny to explain, because it's like, I had never really felt pursued, really. And I felt that she was pursuing me. I couldn't figure out why, but I felt that love and pursuit, and I was like, obviously, you know, I'm going to pursue her,
yes,
for sure. And just like getting to really meet her family, you know, I couldn't imagine life without them too. Just having them in my life, and just the you know, the people of faith that they are, and for taking love and that they show me, and like how they've been there for me these you know past year and a half. It's, you know, I could have never dreamed it up. I'm just extremely blessed for them.
Good. I have one more question. I think you touched on it. You talked about suicide. And one of the things that our company really takes time to do is really share our story when we're out working with organizations, especially when we're working with the university here, the wrestling team. You said you were the guy who laughed at people. Now that you're on the opposite side of that, how do you view suicide, and what do you do to help reach out to individuals who are struggling with suicide?
That's a great question, brother. I mean, I think just the perspective of it, like I talked about, before I looked at it as a way of a cowardice move where you're taking the easy way out. I had seen that, and I had been affected by it too. I had known people, loved people that, you know, that had done that, or had, you know, or had thoughts, and because I know you guys have seen it, you know, and even an army kind of stereotype is like, hey, the people that say that stuff are never the ones that do it. They're the ones that are out reaching for attention. You're like, all right, they're going to say that, but the place you get to where it's a place of complete hopelessness, like you feel that there's no other way, and it's a place of fear where you don't know the unknown, and you are completely convinced that this world will be a better place without you, and that everybody you know will be better off not having you around. Which, you know, like seeing the love that I get, you know, I was talking to you know, one of the athletes here today, and he started like, he's like, no way. He's like, Mom, he's like, I say, he's like, that's one of my favorite things to say. And I was like, I thought I made that up, man. But I said, you know, I'm not a man of monetary wealth. I'm not wealthy in that meaning, but I'm a very wealthy man. I was like, and the way I measure my wealth is the love that I show and the reciprocation of that love that I get, especially the love of brothers, which I'm extremely blessed and fortunate to have, and extremely wealthy in that sense that I define it. To answer the question about, you know, how do we address it, these people feel alone when they have these feelings. It's a place of complete being alone. And they think they're the only people that are going through this at the time. But if you need to be vulnerable with other people, people are afraid, and there's a stereotype about, you know, if you're a strong man, you can't be vulnerable with other people. You can't tell them these experiences you had or these feelings you had. You know, you're not a strong man if you've done that. Like, you know, you need to toughen up, or, you know, do you think that issue's bad, or I had to do this or that, and we compare trauma or something, but everybody has their giants, you know, just because you feel that yours is worse. And that was another thing I went to. After everything happened to me, when I would hear problems from people, I'd be like, okay, all right, yeah, it's a terrible problem. Like, let me show you some real problems. Like, what a messed up way to look at that. Like, you know, everybody has their issue. Like, and it might affect other people more. And it's like, you know, you're not walking in their shoes. You don't know. It's just like how you show people love. It's like one of my mentors just shared with me, you know, a few days ago. He was telling me about, you know, to know someone or to love someone is to know them. You have to really know them. Like, he's like, you know, I can explain to you, you know, I can tell you about my wife and I can tell you all things about her, but you can't, it's impossible for you to love her like I love her because you don't know her. Like, you don't know about her. And so how do you know about somebody and how do they know about you is being vulnerable with them, being able to talk to them. Like, if you're not able to do that and you're just locked up, you're not going to be, you know, you're not going to be able to truly know them and love them. And, you know, people need to know that, hey, they're not alone. Like, these feelings you have, they're not, you know, there are other people out there that have felt this. You know, it's not exclusive to you.
Which brings up a really good point. You'll get people that'll say, well, why would I listen to such a person? Why would I listen to a group of people if you got such these issues? Why? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you that's just some people, right? Like, well, if I put on YouTube or TV, like, look at these other people, their lives are all put together, you know, but it's like you said, everybody's got a giant. The thing is, this group all came together for God knows whatever reason, right? But it's like
Everybody bothering us on the phone.
I mean, yeah. No, but like everybody's vulnerable enough, right, to go out there and tell people. And I think out of all the opportunities we've gotten to speak to people, coming here to this university and talking to this team, it was like an absolute home run because they were able to look at you and be like, wow, a D1 wrestler is something I'm inspiring to be right now. And this is my life. This is my identity. And when you were like, there's a lot of parallels between the military and what you're feeling right now. Trauma is trauma is trauma. You may not have experienced everything I did because you haven't lived as long. That's fine. That doesn't take away from what you have seen and I have seen. But you drew a lot of parallels to them to the point that the kids staying after talking hours, right? Wanting to know more. Wanting to know, like, hey, I'm there now, or hey, I'm heading that way. And that's why you bring these people on. That's why, like, your story, we've put it up before, but like, people, bad things have happened to people, but it doesn't end there. Because you don't let it define you, like we always say. Hitting rock bottom doesn't define you. Your comeback story is what's going to define you. So regardless of what everybody says, regardless of what critics say and what people say, at the end of the day, your story's impacting people. That's what matters.
That's good. I don't think I have anything else because you just closed it out really good. Thanks, Jeff. No.
Hey,
That's what he does.
No, that's actually really, really good. You know, that's episode number 3 in our instructor series, talking to Gavin, getting to know him. Please share, like, subscribe, save. And if you're out there struggling with suicide, seriously having a hard time, reach out, say something. If you know someone that's struggling with suicide, you know, show them that you care about them and love on them because they need you. We thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you in our next episode.